what it's like to live in the Colombian countryside, what it's like to own a home in the Colombian countryside and buy a home in a small pueblo, essentially. I don't live in a big city. The pueblo is about 12,000 people. I live about 15 minutes, which is about 3 kilometers from the pueblo, which, you know, if you live in the US, you might be thinking, oh, that's like suburbia. Well, as soon as you leave a small town, a pueblo in Colombia, as soon as you get outside of the, you know, 1 or 2 blocks away from the central square, it's rural. It's very country. The first thing that I want to address is when you buy it, I bought from somebody that I know, which is really important here because a lot of things can happen. For example, so I bought from somebody I knew, and there are a few things that once I moved in here, I am like, oh, we asked about that and did not get a straight answer. Number one being the road. When I first moved here, the road was not this nice. They were fixing it up. So every time I came to visit this house, I came like 3 or 4 times, there was like absolutely no traffic, none. And I was like, okay, well, it seems like it used to be, and it used to be a big road. It used to be one of the main roads. But since then, the years, you know, it became less and less traffic and less people go down these roads. The only people who really go down this road are people who live further out into the countryside. So it's a lot of locals. I didn't buy a place completely on the top of a mountain, really isolated, because that's not what I was, I mean, I was torn because I do want to be severely super isolated, yet the rational side of me is like, no. Because eventually I'll probably be living here by myself, and I want to eventually have some cabins, rent out spaces, which with this road, now I'm going to figure out, okay, can I do that? I'm going to have to build houses, little cabins down at the bottom, and then I'm going to have to figure out how to put in, you know, safe ways that people can get down there and be away from the road, plus create cabins that are more insulated so you don't hear the road, which actually at night the noise stops. It's not really that bad. I'm complaining because it is something that I want you to be aware of. So my point being, even if you know the person you're buying from, they're not going to be 100% honest with you. And I know this can happen anywhere. This can happen in the US, this can happen anywhere. But since if you're a foreigner, you're moving here, and you might be thinking, oh, Colombians are so nice and open and, you know, friendly and outgoing, they're not going to tell you everything, even if you know them, which can happen anywhere in the world, I understand. But when you're in your home country, you have an idea, you kind of know, you know the sense, you know the culture, you know, like, oh, they're lying, you can tell. And maybe the road wasn't this busy because it was being fixed, and now that it's better, it's not even great. This road is not great. It's good in front of my house, but if you go further up or further down, it's a disaster. So, which leads me into, the road is mostly for local transportation, as well as they're fixing the road down there, so I think that's why there's more traffic. And it depends on the day. If it's a holiday, it's less busy. If it's, I don't know, if it's a random Tuesday in December, there's no traffic. But also at night, there's no noise. Here, after 5:30 p.m., dead silent until about 6 a.m. And then people go to work. And then after that, there's nothing until maybe, what is it now, around 4? 4 is usually when it's a little bit louder. 4 to 5:30, and then that's it. So it's not that bad. But that leads me into the second point of moving rurally in the countryside is Colombia, people tend to live in the countryside. It's a lot cheaper. People have family homes that they have been living in for generations and generations and generations. So there are houses all up in these mountains, and you're like, is there even a road? Yeah, there's a road like this. That's how they get there. They take the Jeep. You're never really in, I lived in another part of Antioquia before, and you're never really truly alone. You're never, in the US, it's such a big country that you can live 10 miles from town and be completely isolated and never see another human for like a month straight. Not here. You're gonna see people walking around. Even when I lived in the other part of Antioquia, I lived on a dead-end road, and I was like, this is heaven. It's a dead-end road. It's gonna be not busy. There are hardly any neighbors. It was louder than here. And it was a dead-end road. There's like 2 people that lived past me, but there's a person who lived in front of me who rented that house out on weekends from Medellin. The noise was so loud. The neighbors were loud. And that's the thing, you don't know what your neighbors are going to be like, because in Colombia, it's really loud. Living here, you might be able to hear the noise sometimes from the house next door. That is nothing compared to most towns. Most pueblos are so loud, even in the countryside, because there's no noise ordinance. You can be as loud as you want. I could be out here at 12 o'clock at night blasting something, and not one person will say a word to me. Well, it's a good and it's a bad. If I'm your neighbor, I'm gonna be pissed. So, but no one will ever say anything to you. It's also that kind of, it's a little passive aggressive. So people don't actually say what they're thinking to your face. It's kind of like underhanded, you know. Sometimes the neighbors are loud. They have a party like once a year, but that's nothing. It doesn't bother me. Once I'm in the house, I don't hear anything. So yeah, you're never truly alone, because a lot of people live in these mountains and they've been there for years and they have family there, and you never know when you buy somewhere if it's going to be a loud neighborhood. Even if it's a dead-end street, it could be loud, and people are always going to be going by. You're going to see people walking. When I lived in that other part of Antioquia, the military came to my house 2 or 3 times just because. There's no reason. I mean, nothing ever happened, but they just showed up. It was very strange. Here, that doesn't happen. This is a totally different type of pueblo. So yeah, you're never going to be truly isolated, even if you buy remote, because there's always going to be people around, which I know in the US we're used to. Like I grew up really so far in the middle of nowhere on a dead-end road. We had a few neighbors, but it was pretty isolated. So for me, that is what I thought if I moved to the countryside here it would be like, and it's not like that. And I'm actually pretty glad, because that would be really isolating, especially if I eventually do end up living here by myself. I, don't want to be in complete isolation. I actually kind of enjoy living closer to town. So if I need to go, I can walk to town, or I can take one of the Jeeps that pass by. So another thing is that most people here don't have a car. A lot of people have maybe a motorcycle, but most of the people here, that's why there's so many Jeeps that pass, is because the locals take Jeeps. It's a lot cheaper. It probably cost me maybe 3,000 pesos, which is like 75 cents to get to town on a Jeep versus a motorcycle. I take a motorcycle, it costs me 7,000, 8,000 pesos. And a lot of times what is going past are moto taxis or Jeeps taking and picking up people who are going to work or coming from work. So that is why it is so loud. But also, like I said, it's, I'll probably have this house when I retire. I mean, I'm never gonna sell this house. I'm gonna keep it, and I'll eventually retire here. So being closer to the road is a nice thing versus having to walk 45 minutes to my house, which if people are in Jeeps. When I do the walkarounds, you see how people live high up in the mountains and take horses. So that is very common here, is that people don't drive. They take public transportation, to the effect of even taking a horse and taking their goods to town on mules. So that is still done here. This is just from my experience. Maybe you live somewhere where you're like, no, that's wrong. I live so far, no one ever comes, and I have 50 acres of land. You're right, totally different. But this has just not been my experience, and I've lived in 2 different places. So another thing about living and moving to Colombia in general is when you decide to homestead, you need to know what type of weather you are looking for. When I first moved here, I thought I was looking for somewhere hot, hot, hot. And then I was traveling around and I realized that in the last place that I lived was so hot that when it's just hot, you can't do anything. It's just insane. And when it's hot, there are more bugs and snakes. Bugs don't bother me. Snakes bother me, because when you get to these hot climates, you have very poisonous snakes. It is a tropical country, and it has a lot of aspects of the rainforest, especially if you are closer to the rainforest. But I live kind of where it's woods, you know, not quite the jungle, but it looks jungly, but it doesn't have the same dangers as the rainforest or the jungle, because I don't really have poisonous snakes around here. The closest poisonous snake that I have would be the coral snake, which they also have a false coral, which thank goodness I have not seen either, but the last owner said he did see a false coral here. So, and I saw a snake the other day. I'll put pictures. It got stuck in my wire, so I had to cut the poor guy out. But it was a green snake. I don't think it was poisonous. It was pretty big. So I do have snakes, but I don't think they're not like the Ichthys. The Ichthys is one of the most venomous snakes, and I had that where I used to live, where it was really hot. And I live in the perfect temperature because it is cool at night. It might get down to like 60s. I knew that. I was living here for about 8 months before I decided to buy, because I like the cool nights. I like the temperature. I like the rain. And then like now it gets really hot and nice out, and then you're like, wow, I'm ready for it to cool down. So, you know, I would never be someone who would live on the coast, because I don't want 110-degree days, because I will die. And I also would not live in Bogota, because for me it's too cold. So this is like the perfect balance, in my opinion. Something else that when you're homesteading that we from the US, maybe me, I would say me, we don't really think about how difficult it is to find flat space. Because I mean, I'm from Kentucky, so I grew up in the mountains, but just because I grew up in the mountains, we had tons of flat space. So we had flat space here, maybe a hill here, flat space, hill. So I grew up where it was perfect for, you know, animals and gardening, plus the mountain. Now, when I came here, I was looking for something similar, because, you know, you want to kind of buy what you know, and you know how to farm, and you know how to live on. Yeah, no, I was not going to find that here. And it's not that you can't find that in Colombia. If you go to the plains, the Llanos region, you can find flat plains. And if you go to Huila or some other places down south, you can find flat plains. But then I realized that I love the mountains, and if I want to live in where I have the views of the mountains, and I have the clouds and the kind of moody weather, and the different types of, you know, the rain and the moodiness and the sun, if I wanted to have it all, I was gonna have to live on a hill. So the terrain, you're always fighting with, you know, when you buy here in Colombia, you're fighting with compromising. You're not fighting, you're compromising on what you want. Like, I chose having this climate and being in a pueblo that I know is safe over having flat land, because I know that from living in Colombia long enough that I don't want to live in a pueblo that is controlled by the mafia. This is one of those big trucks going by because they're fixing the road. Or I don't know what they're doing, picking plantains. Yeah, this is a plantain truck. That's another thing here. Since everybody's a farmer. Did you lose something, buddy? Everyone is a farmer here. So the big trucks haul their goods in the town. That's how they make money. So, and then all the people on the motorcycle work there. So it's like, okay, if I want to live where you grow your own food, people are going to be selling their own food, and they need big trucks to haul it. So, I mean, that's also a compromise. Now, I like always talking about the road, but it doesn't really, I'm kind of used to it. It doesn't bother me. I would kind of, yeah, I'm okay with it. Maybe in the future I'll buy something more remote. I don't know. But then I'll be old. I'm already getting old. We'll see. Did you drop your ball? So yeah, I compromised on having more of a flatter land, because I had been to places that had flatter land, but something wasn't right. Like, I looked at a few places and it was so cold. I can deal rain and warm. I can't do rain and cold. Here at night it gets cold and I can put like a jumper on, but the cold where it's like freezing and oh no, I can't do that. Even though I love the area, I needed this. I needed to be sunny most of the time, and most of the day it is sunny here. Just recently it's been rainy, which it's okay. It's not cold rain. Like if I'm in Bogota, I'll be freezing. Or like that region. There's something else about living and homesteading here. So yeah, you're gonna be, and then when you have the terrain, like I have a very hilly terrain. but also it's good for things like plantains and bananas and coffee. Yucca love this terrain. So it's like, okay, but now where am I gonna put my squash? What am I gonna do with if I want animals? So I have to, it's kind of like I have to play around and put in trellis gardens or sloped terraces on my land. And I've already been sloping and I've already been creating raised bed gardens. And it's kind of like, it's almost like a game. I mean, if that's not your thing, I kind of like that it's a bit difficult, because if it was too easy, I'd be bored. So I've been, yeah, it's difficult, but it's enjoyable for me. And I would rather have this view right here than not have that view. And to have that view, I have to be on the hill. Yeah, so to have that view, I needed to be on the side of a hill. So that is where I am. And that is basically what sold me this property, is because I wanted a mountain view. I wanted to wake up and see the clouds rolling over the mountain, because it's like one of the things that I wanted is to see the mountains, because I love the mountains. I can never go to the beach another day of my life, but if you put me in the middle of the forest, jungle, anywhere, I'll be happy as a clam. Put me on a beach and I will be miserable. I don't like the water, but I like fresh water. So there is something else about homesteading here, is if you don't have a property that has a spring on it, and maybe even if you do have a property that has a spring on it, if it's a really dry year, they can dry up. And if you're living rural like me, in your water stops, we don't have city water. We don't have water from the town. We would have to go buy water from the town or collect rainwater. But luckily, I have 1, 2, 3 springs on my property, and I have a river. Well, you've seen it. It's like a little, I'll show you. It's just a little creek, we call it creek. It's not very big, but it's enough that if we didn't have water, I could go down there and get water. Plus I have 2 or 3 springs on the property. So if one of them dries up, the chances of all 3 of them drying up, and the old owner said that when he lived here, it never dried up. But also, you never know, because you don't know if they're telling you the truth, because people want to sell their houses here. And it's not like the US. You don't have an MLS. You don't have the same kind of, it's just different. When you buy land, you have to, do your due diligence, which I tried and I thought I did, but you never know until you live somewhere. That can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be here. But so far, the only thing is the road is a little bit louder than he said it was. And water in Colombia is public. It's like I have a spring, but directly with that spring is my neighbor's spring. And even though it's on my property, the water is for both of us. It's not like I can say, oh no, you can't use it because it's on my property. It's a public resource. It's not, I don't own the water, so he has the right. And plus, I would never do that anyways. But I know in the US, if you have a spring on your property, your neighbor can't use it or something. I think, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what I read online. Like, that's why it's really important to make sure you have a well. So here we don't have, in some places, if you don't have water and you have to drill a well, then yeah, you're gonna have to drill a well, and it's gonna be expensive, because here it's not common. Most people have springs because there's so much water, especially in Antioquia where I live. So that's not a huge problem. So for example, I do know a lady, she has a finca. Hers is a little higher up, higher altitude than mine. She doesn't have a spring. Well, she has a spring, but it's like her neighbor's spring, and they're higher up in the mountains. So it dried up. I think she said one summer when they didn't have last year, I think it was last year, it was really dry. And the guy here said he never lost water. That was a really dry year. But when I went to her house, we went to visit her, she had like this huge tank full of water. And I was like, oh, you're collecting rainwater? And she's like, yeah, last year we ran out of water, so now we collect all our rainwater all the time. So yeah, it's good to collect rainwater, but I wanted to collect it here, but my guy's like, well, we don't need to, because we have a water tank hooked up to the spring. So even if our spring dried up, we already have a reserve tank, because it always stays full. And I think her tank went dry, and it just went dry, so they had to collect water. So for me, if that happened, I would just tap the other spring or 2, or go to the river. So, making sure you have water. And if you don't have water, what is your backup plan? Can you drill a well? And if you drill a well, is it going to be cost effective, or are you going to have to collect rainwater? Because that is a huge problem, you know, all over. Water is essential to you living. So this is actually where our spring is hooked up to the mountain. So, and you can see that we're not the only one hooked up here. There's 2 or 3 other people that, and this is actually technically the line of my property. So, yeah, so it's like no man's land basically. So we all, I think there are 3 families that are hooked up to the same well right here, or the same spring. And then my neighbors, they don't have like a tank, a reserve tank, so they asked if they could put one on my property right here. And yeah, I told them of course they can, because, you know, in case this dries up, they, you know, want to have a reserve, because they actually have had a lot of issues with the water. We haven't had hardly any. And they're also further down, so I think that's why. But yeah, so they're gonna put one, I don't know, probably right here where I'm standing, which is fine. But this little creek does go all the way, it basically is the line of my property. So, I don't know, they're gonna put one here. But I'll show you the other 2 also. You can see the hose for mine goes through here and all the way over there. Yeah, so I want to go back to, I mentioned something about buying land in a town that's not controlled by the mafia. So that is why it's really important to know where you're moving, because a lot of places here in Colombia are still controlled by drugs. And the other town that I used to live in, actually, if you owned a business, they wanted you to pay protection to somebody. Let's just call it the mafia, because that's what it is. So, yeah. So you have to be careful that the town that you're thinking about buying in doesn't have that, because even though it might not affect you and you're not running a business and you're just living, you just never know. Especially here in Colombia, you just never know. So that's why it's really important to know where you're living. And I actually almost bought land in the other town, but then I was like, do I want to live in a town that has 7 military bases because it used to be so dangerous? Do I want to live somewhere that I know that there are drugs and things are being controlled by this safety protection money that you might have to pay, and they can just show up to your house and be like, we're protecting your land, you have to pay us. That still happens. So, you know, you have to be careful. One of the reasons I bought here is because they don't have that here. They don't do that here. This town was never displaced. It's a heritage town. It's known for safety. So yeah, I mean, but of course, like anywhere in the world, things can change. But for now, I feel pretty confident that that's not going to happen. So I'm okay with that. And you're seeing now my terrain. See, look at this. This is a water collection system for, I don't know. I don't really know who uses it, to be honest. So I guess for now it's whatever, but this goes in here. I've showed you guys this before. And the little creek is down there. just a little creek, but the whole thing goes around the whole property. Even on the other side I have water. So water is very important for me. Because I lived where I used to live in the other part of Antioquia, we had one day no water because the water just stopped working. So yeah, because we didn't have it on our land. So after that I was like, must have water. Plus I grew up, we didn't have water in my land when I grew up. So we had to go to a local like well and pump our water. And the water we had was sulfur. So yeah, I remember that from a little kid. So I guess it stuck with me. Okay, this is my second spring. You can't really see it, but you see it's down here. So it's like the spring is over here somewhere. And then I have a third. Oh, I think I have a third one. This is like where I'm not sure because the land it's so overgrown right now. And this is why it's really important to, if you want to live where it's rainy, be okay with it because it gets overgrown so easily, especially if you're homesteading like with 1 or 2 people like I am. But I'm okay with it. I like it. I like the jungle feel. So for me, it's fine. I'm gonna get some animals. I'm gonna put them down here to be fine. But you know, maybe you're like super type A and you need everything in its place. You should probably not buy somewhere like this because there are places that are flat you can buy. And look at this, but look at this view. Oh my. Those are the clouds rolling in. It's gonna rain. Okay, so I thought this was connected and it might be connected to the one that I showed you, but I was up in there one day and I saw a different hole coming out of the mountain. So I don't know if it's connected. That will be a, let's see. But this is just, you know, a gully for all the rain. This is actually nice to have a little gully here because all the rainwater kind of drifts off into it. And it doesn't flood. Obviously I'm on a hill, so oh, everything just comes down. But look at these beautiful banana trees. The bananas really like the rain. But you can see how steep my hill is here. Look at this. My house is up there. But my goal is, do you see where there's like a thing? I want to put a little terrace in here and change that and make it a usable space right here. And put a little terrace over that. And probably put plants. I'm gonna do some container planting, I think, until in a little greenhouse up there somewhere. Yeah, and I don't have a little space. Well, it's 1.5 acres, which I know there are like other people who have like a huge land. This is for me, and I thought I wanted bigger land, but this is the thing, like you always get what you need, not what you want. I wanted like 100 acres. Okay, realistically I wanted 5 acres. And in the future I might get 5 acres. But you know, this jungle of 1.5 acres for me is plenty because I think if I had any more I would be extremely overwhelmed. And now I kind of have to make, it's like a puzzle like I was talking about earlier, how I have to make it work. It's like a puzzle. I like figuring things out. So I have to figure out how to put the animals, where to put the animals, how to do this, how to do that, how to not let everything die. Oh yeah, so it's challenging but fun. I need a purpose, I need a goal, I need an objective. So this is a huge project and you know, it's going. Look at this. Okay, so this is where I think either the one nacimiento hooks up or is a whole separate one, but it drains. This is from up there and it drains all the way down. And you can hear the creek. It goes into the river over there. This is my dog's favorite spot, but I didn't let him come down today because I don't want him to run away. So you can see here. And again, this is the line of my property right here. So we both have the access, but my neighbor owns, he owns so much land. He owns the whole like land all around me basically. I wondered if this like was the family and it was his, part of his before, but yeah, so he's super nice though. And like, I know this is like just blabbing, but I would love to put like a walkway here to be like in the jungle, to like come down here and like have a little footpath. Anyways, you know. So homesteading in Colombia, farming in Colombia, having a finca, living in rural Colombia, countryside of Colombia, whatever you want to call it, is not as easy as, you know, you might see on my channel. I'm assuming you don't think it's easy by what you see on my channel, because I never want to give a false, you know, a misrepresentation of what life is like here. I just happen to live in a town that is safe and nice, and I don't have to worry about a lot of the things that I might have to worry about if I lived somewhere else. With that said, I think anywhere in the world can be dangerous. I think anywhere in the world can have its problems. Anywhere in the world can have people not being honest with you. So I think if you want to live somewhere like this, then you should. And it's gonna work out or it's not gonna work out. Like, that's the thing with life. You can try. If it doesn't work out, then do something different. You know, rent your farm, sell your farm, do something different. But you'll never know unless you try. So this is me trying farming. I mean, I love it here, so I'm not leaving anytime soon. I love living far from, away from people, but yet close enough where I can get to town quickly. I don't mind the road as much as I complain about, because I'm gonna build a cabin down here. You know, the challenges that I have are ones that I was aware of because I was living in the country a really long time. Well, I've been living off and on here for 3 years. So you notice I didn't mention language struggles, because hopefully by now, you know, if you don't speak the language of the country you're moving to, it's automatically going to be harder. Oh, one more thing I didn't talk about. You're not going to be able to find things that you're used to living in a Colombia. It even gets even worse when you move to the countryside, because if I want things like I have kombucha, I had to order it on Mercado Libre, go pick it up in the city in Medellin. So I've talked about that before, so I didn't really talk about it here, but just, you know, it's not like the US. We don't have Amazon. You can't get Amazon dumped at your doorstep. We don't have a Walmart down the road. We don't have a Kmart. We don't have a Target. You know, we don't have big box stores. So hopefully you already knew that, because if you've been following me for a while, I talk about things like that. You know, the cost of living is a lot less here also, but just because it's less to live doesn't mean it's not expensive for the locals. Like, inflation is happening here too, and I honestly, I don't make, I mean, I probably make, right now, I don't make any money. I mean, I make a little bit of money. So for me, my cost of living is very low, because it has to be that way, because I bought this house. So, and I knew that it was going to be tough. So for me, you know, I'm not out here buying expensive things. When you live in the countryside, you learn how to fix things. You learn how to live with less. You learn how to eat what you're growing. You learn how to grow things that you want to eat, because every little bit counts. And, you know, your money will go further here. And yeah, you can live on less, because I don't have that many bills. I'll do a cost of living video. I've already done one, but someone requested me to do another one. So I might do a live and talk about it. But, you know, I save a lot of money on coffee, because I have a coffee farm. And I got the coffee roasted. I sold the coffee. I made money on coffee, which was enough for me to live off of for like 3 or 4 months. So, but I got paid in Colombian wages. I got paid like the locals get paid. That's the thing. A lot of people who move to Colombia, and me too. I do too. I have US dollars. I have savings. But, you know, it dwindles when you don't have income. So, you know, I write, I make these videos, I make a little bit of money, I make enough, I have savings. I mostly save my money to go back home. I'm gonna go visit my family, and I want a new laptop and a new thing. So you learn how to stretch your money, you learn how to not spend as much and save for the big things that you really want or need in life. So, you know, countryside living is not for everybody. It is not easy. It can be quite challenging. I do not live off-grid, and I eventually want to, but right now I don't, because it's not really worth it to buy solar. Solar is so expensive here, and my electric bill is so cheap. So, I mean, actually, I lied. Our electric bill is really expensive for here, but compared to you in the US, my electric bill is very affordable. I will do a whole cost of living video, another one, because things have changed. So yeah, I don't ever want to give you a rosy picture that everything is easy and perfect and I have this great online job that I'm making a ton of money and that's how I can live here. No, I work the land, I eat what I grow, I live very basic like how everyone else lives here, because I think that's a huge thing of integrating into the society, is living how people around you live, fixing things and, you know, not overspending, not going above my means. Anyways, I'm hoping my squash grows so I have some squash to eat. Once I get some chickens, I'll have eggs, and I mean, after that, I'll be fine. I can live off plantains and yucca. So, and eventually, maybe one day I'll rent my room out when I probably will be living alone in the next 6 months to a year. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. I'll just play it by ear. So yes, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.